And he said, look, you got anything I can do? He said, I'm dire straits.
Did he know anything about the clothing business?
He had been in business, and I said, would you want to run the Dallas store? He said, heck yeah. We were selling clothes like crazy, and things were rocking. And I went down there one day, and I said, hey, where's the money?
I was about to say that.
And he started crying.
He was a gambler.
No, he
got divorced. You didn't know it.
He could have had all those. He was a roller. He got in with the Cowboys, and he was spending money.
Your money.
Yeah. I called New York. They flew down the next day and shut him down. He came to the store, and he said, well, it's not as bad as you think. I said, well, how bad is it? And he told me, and I went, how can you say that's not bad? He said, well, and then you owe us this.
Let's raise a meter, this for all the dreamers. Yeah, this is my time right now. It's my
Welcome to another episode of East Texas Unfiltered. I'm your host, J. Chad Parker. Today, we're going to talk to someone who's been influential in the style in Tyler for the last 40 plus years. He came here quite a while ago. He's weathered the storm, and he's still here. Many of you will know him by his first name only. Harley, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chad. I appreciate you having me. This is going to be fun.
Well, it's going to be interesting because, everybody knows you as a first name, Harley. I mean, they know you as Harley Hooper, but they know you as Harley, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Because people find you friendly. And when you feel like you know someone, you call people by their first name.
Yeah. Let me tell you how that name happened on this store. Years ago, when I opened my first store in 1979, I was very modest and still am. But at that time, I didn't think I wanted my name on the store because I thought that was a little aggressive at that time. And I was 30 years old. So when I met your friend and mine, Bridget, she said, what are you calling this thing? Suit Club, J. Carl, all this stuff. And everybody comes to Harley's.
She called hers Bridget's.
Oh, yeah. And when we got together, she said, this is bull. We got to change the name. It's got to be Harley's. And it was so easy because people were already coming to Harley's because they were coming, a lot of them coming to see me.
Right. I mean, that's, the clothing, before we get into your life a little bit, the clothing is really a lot about relationships, isn't it?
Oh, we sell service and friendship and relationships. And there's all kinds of slogans out there like, a good salesman can make a living, but you make a fortune with relationships. Now, I'm not saying I've made a fortune, but we've made a fortune of good friends with these relationships.
People enjoy, doing business with people that they like and that make them feel good, right?
Exactly. Chad, let me give you a little insight on what's happened the last 5 to 7 years. If you look at the stores, the big box stores, Nordstrom's closing in the Galleria now. They're closing their store. What's happened with these stores is they once had the same philosophy that we did. And I'm not saying we're cooler, smarter, any of those things. I'm just saying we never got off of the theory that friendship and service was the thing that was going to take us where we wanted to go. These other stores, big box stores and so on and so forth, they kind of moved to this, nothing wrong with the internet, but kind of moved to the internet
right. Online
sales.
No personal service.
And they dressed, they come to work in shorts or cotton pants and a T-shirt.
They were a casual salesman.
Exactly. And what's happened with this is that the people that are spending the money at this level of people that are looking at clothes like we have, they want to be taken care of. Not only taken care of, but they want to see what they're going to look like.
And that also includes, the way that it fits.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, you can't buy something online and get it in the mail, put it on, and expect it to fit you perfectly.
We made a big step about, and I know you know this because we've talked about it, but about 8 months ago, we took a leap. We had good alteration people, and we did have a good tailor for quite some time, but she got old.
It's getting hard.
Surprising.
Less people are doing that as a trade.
Oh, it's a it's a dying trade. But we found one, and we hired her. We're paying big bucks for her, but she changed the dynamics of how things fit in our store.
And speed, probably.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Well, it's certainly a service that, the big box and the internet can't offer, which is someone to, tailor your stuff. You come back and say, yeah, this is good, or oh, maybe it needs a little bit more, and get it done, right?
We tailor everything, and then we have everyone basically try it back on. We want them to go out the way we want them to go out. Not a lot of these guys, and they're all tied up in their professions and things. They don't really care as much as we do. But if we send them out looking like we want them to look, we're going to get feedback.
Right. I mean, it's indirect marketing, if you will.
Exactly. You walk into a party and you're perfection.
And I'm looking good.
You're looking
good. People go, hey, where'd you get that?
Yeah, they're going to say something to you about it. Hey, that's cool.
Looks good. It's a good jacket.
Exactly.
Speaking of this jacket,
hey,
I did get this at Harley's, full disclosure.
That's a great jacket.
A salesperson, a person in retail, I mean, they have to have a certain demeanor. They have to be nice. You have to take criticism. You have to hear things that aren't true, and keep smiling, right?
Right.
And you seem to have the perfect personality for over 40 years that we've known you here to just kind of, always be upbeat. Where does that come from?
A very humble background. My family were farmers in Oklahoma. So, I didn't have new shirts.
Your dad wasn't showing you the latest styles?
He was not showing me. If I could show you a picture sometime. All three boys, and not one of us had a shirt on. We had Levi's and rolled up pants. Nothing was ever fitted.
Where were you in Oklahoma? Where did you grow up?
We grew up right on the Red River. It was about, if the crow flies, it was about 15 miles from Wichita Falls, straight north, and then 40 miles from Lawton, Oklahoma. So we were just across the river. We were maybe a mile and a quarter from the river. I mean, we were what was called river rats. We were right there on the river.
Did you graduate from high school in that town? I
graduated from a high school that had 108 kids, and now, that's not my class. I had 25 in my class. The top 3 grades had 108. No, the top 4 grades had 108. And, back then, Dad said, you need to go to college. Of course, I was going to college because I was getting the heck out of there.
Right, that was a way out.
Yeah, that was a way out. And so he said, go get your teaching certificate, and you can always fall back on teaching. Well, this was in the 60s. So, that was a very common thing for people because there was a shortage of teachers back then. And so I went.
It paid pretty good back then.
I mean, you got 3 months off. I mean,
yeah, right.
We didn't know anything about that, but we did that. So got to college and found out real quick that teaching was probably not what I was going to do, and changed my major to business and had to work. So I got a job in a men's clothing store because I idolized clothes. Well, I just had a passion for it because I never had clothes. I mean, we had hand-me-down. So
where was this that you went to college?
It was in Durant, Oklahoma. Southeastern State University, and it's a small, about 4,000 kids. It's actually business and aviation was what it was.
Was there a men's clothing store there?
There was a small store there, and it had been there for 30-something years at the time. I interviewed 4 times for the job, and the guy told me the first 3 times that he didn't need me. It wasn't like today. If someone walked into our store dressed the way you're dressed, I'd hire him before he got out the door. But back then, there were probably 5 to 7 kids trying to get that job. So we had to campaign for that job. I had to go back and back and back. And it just so happened the guy that worked in the store for the 4 years before I took the job, he ended up being my roommate and one of my best friends. So he was promoting me all that time, trying to get me the job. Well, I finally got the job, worked 5 years in the store, and then Ended up in Sherman, Texas. Guy comes in. He says, I'd really like for you to work in our store, because there wasn't that many guys with,
any really fashion sense, right? I mean, that's kind of a skill you develop, right?
It is. Well, you have to study. I mean, and I still study. To this day, I look at what's happening in the European and Canadian market almost every day, and just to make sure that we're not slipping in any way, shape, or form. So if you don't study the market that you're dealing with, then you're going to slip real quick, because it's not as easy as everyone thinks it is, because
you just go to a magical buyer, you buy all the good stuff, bring it back to Tyler, put it in the store. That's not how it works.
It's not quite like that.
Go to market?
Yeah, we go to markets. And actually, 2 years ago, we made a big jump, because I've always wanted to go to Italy, to the market in Italy. And so we'd had a good run, and I told Bridget, I said, let's go to Florence and go to the market. And she said, I'm on. She'd go anywhere with me at that time. And
Italy, that's what
not a bad gig.
Just to go for work. I mean,
great restaurants and good food. But the market there is the key market in the world. I mean, borrow none. So, what you see there is what's going to happen here for the next 3 years. I mean,
you get a look ahead of time.
Way ahead of time.
You know what's coming.
Yeah. We knew what was happening. Now, that was 2 years ago. We'll go back next year. We didn't go this year. We'll go back next year and get another, shot for the next 3 years. But they're always 18 to 2 years ahead of us.
So you get this job in Sherman, and I'm assuming when you talk to the person that's interviewing you, you're able to put different colors and patterns together, and you've kind of got something that's what you're using to interview the job, right?
Right. We've got time for this. I'm going to tell you a story.
Oh yeah, we got plenty of time.
So I got the job, or they hired me. I was a little pushback. They were a very aggressive type men's store. They had 5 stores. They had 2 in Tulsa, 1 in Dallas, and 1 in Sherman, 1 in Okmulgee, Oklahoma.
Aggressive meaning their business model, they were growing too fast?
They were more aggressive in the style of salesmanship that they used. So the president of the company was a graduate of Boston College. Okay, brilliant guy.
Right, that's in Sherman.
That's in Sherman.
And that's a very prestigious college.
And he was a very sharp guy. And we interviewed and talked for probably 2 hours. And he said, tell you what, we're going to hire you. And I said, well, Mike, I'm not sure I'm ready to do this. He said, you need to give this a shot. He said, Harley, this is something, he said, you do not have to sell like we do. He said, you can sell like in whatever you do.
Did you have another job at the time?
I was working I just graduated, so I was still in the clothing store in Durant, Oklahoma.
Okay. So
I moved from that store to Sherman, Texas. And he said, here's the deal. If you're half as good, now I'm not bragging, but he said, if you're half as good as we think you are, you'll have a key to the store in 1 year. Well, 8 months later, he come in the store and threw me the keys to the store.
Which means you're going to run it exclusively?
I ran it exclusively for 10 years for him. Yeah.
And you were about how old were you? 22? 23? Yeah.
23.
Right out of college?
Right out of college.
All right. So you get off to a pretty good start. You're 33. You've ran this men's store. You've learned the business.
Yeah. I learned
parts of the business.
Totally different side of the business. And they were very aggressive, but they had great taste, and they studied the market. But it was basically coming from, we went to New York twice a year for a week. We didn't go to Europe and all that, but we went to New York twice a year for a week, and then we went to Dallas to every market, which were 4 at that time. So the New York markets, back in the 70s, they campaigned for us. I mean, we get off the plane, they'll pick us up. I mean, They treated us.
They wanted distributors.
They wanted us, and they sent us to shows and stuff like that. That all stopped in the 90s. It ended really in the late 80s. But long story short, I'd gotten to the store in Sherman. We had 3 kids working there. Okay, and they hated me. I was assistant manager, and they didn't like me being there because I was basically the same age as they were. And so I took it real cool, real slow. I straightened shirts and changed tags and did everything that they were doing. And one day, they're not talking to me. So one day I see this gentleman, a black gentleman, at the window. He's looking in the window and he's picking his teeth because he had been down to White's cafeteria having lunch, and it was 2:30 in the afternoon. And they're watching me, the kids. And so they're going, if he walks in here, we're going the back, because they're not going to pay that much attention to. It had nothing to do with color.
He just felt like he couldn't buy anything.
Yeah, he was in overalls and combat.
Right. He's not going to buy something. It's too expensive.
He's not our guy.
Right.
So he did. He came in the store, had a straw hat, overalls, and he walks in the store, and they ran to the back, 3 of them. They're behind the curtains watching me. So I greet him. Hey, how you doing? Saw you walk, looking in the windows, or anything I can help you with. He said, well, son, he said, there's a pair of shoes in there I'd like to kind of look at. I said, you got it. Which ones? He said, well, any of them. They're all 3 colors in there. I said, okay. So I said, you're talking about the patent leather Volare shoe. He said, yeah, that's it. And I looked down his foot. It was about this long.
14,
and it was about that wide. And I was going, what size shoe you wear? And he said, what size you have? And I said, well, I have a 12. That's as big as we used to carry. And he said, I think I can wear that. I said, you do? So I went to the back, pulled the shoe, came out, gave him one of those long shoe spoons, and he pushed this foot into this shoe, and it was rolling over the side. And I went, are you okay? And he said, yeah, I think it'll be fine. And I said, you're kidding. Are you okay with that? He said, yeah. So what colors do you have? So I went to the back. We'd just gotten to fill in a week before on those shoes, and there were 5 colors. So these kids are laughing. I can hear them in the background. So I laid them all out and fanned all 5 pair out, and they were all colored, brown, black, white, green, burgundy. And I said, what colors do you think you like? He said, what color do you like? And I said, well, I take the course. I've been there 2 weeks. I take the course of least resistance. And I say, well, the ones that we're selling is probably the black and brown. He said, I don't like the black and brown. I like the maroon and the green. I said, well, okay, we'll do the maroon and green.
What are you going to wear it with?
Yeah. I said, you need anything to wear it with? He said, no, I just need the shoes. He said, but I'll take them all. I said, all 5 pair? And I could hear the kids in the back gulp for air, because they were $125 a piece in 1973. Okay?
And they were about to miss a good sale in commission.
They missed a big sale in commission. So he said, yeah, I'll take them all. So I said, you want them all? So instantly I go into a defensive mode, because I've only been there 2 weeks. We didn't have credit cards. We had checks and cash.
Right.
And I'm going,
how are you going to pay for this, son? Sir?
Exactly. I said, because I'm thinking, if he pulls a checkbook out, I don't know who this man is. It wouldn't matter who he was. I wouldn't know who he was. And so he said, I said, well, how do you want to take care of this? He reaches in his pocket and pulls out a roll.
Yeah.
I mean, a large roll. And I instantly go into curious. I go, no one has that much money. I'd never seen that much money. We start to the cash stand. I'm behind the cash stand, writing the ticket up for these 6 pair of shoes. And I said, well, what have you been doing today? And he said, son, he said, I've been down to that Lincoln Mercury place on 75. I came here to buy a Cartier Lincoln for my wife. And I said, you're kidding. He said, no. He said, it's our anniversary. He said, son, I got there at 10:45, and he said, I stayed till 1 o'clock and no one waited on me. He said, you really don't think I need 5 pair of patent leather shoes, do you? They probably don't fit. I said, whoa, I can't do this. Because my heart broke for him, basically. And he said, you're going to do it. He said, I'm going to take the shoes. So I said, well, do you still want the car? And he said, not from that car. I won't name the name, but I said, not from that dealership. And I said, well, I got a buddy in Durant, Oklahoma that is graduated with me, and he's assistant manager at a shop there, and they carry Lincoln. If I could help you get the car, would you? He said, yeah, I'll buy the car. I said, you know where Durant is? And he looked at me and said, yeah, I'm from Cartwright, Oklahoma. I said, you are?
He was living on oil land.
No, there was a barbecue joint. It's the only thing in Cartwright, Oklahoma, but he had people coming from Dallas, all over the country to eat his barbecue. And he was smiling. And I said, there's not much in Cartwright. I said, except for Po Sam's barbecue. And he said, I'm Po Sam. And those kids learned the lesson of their life, because you don't judge a book by the cover.
We've heard that, and you never know when it's going to pop out like that. But, that says something about you. That you would perceive that to be happening and understand what that man was, he wouldn't keep looking or come in if he wasn't, interested in something, right?
Exactly.
Did you get that from your parents? Did you get that did you have a less than stellar childhood and develop it on your own? Where do you think that came from, that empathy?
Well, we all 3 boys, we were very fortunate in the parents that we had, because my dad was probably one of the most, everything was done on a handshake. He had a very minimal education, but he was a farmer. But everything he did on a handshake, and he lived up to that handshake. I've seen him lose money and lose time helping other people because of his handshake.
And they didn't honor the handshake.
Well, they honored the handshake, but he offered to do something that took a lot more time
than he thought.
But he never complained about it. So I give Dad credit for a lot of that constitution that was built, because he was a man of few words, but the few words that he said were always factual, in his mind.
Well, you mentioned your parents, so I'm assuming that your mother had some influence, and I would suspect that she was sweet, tender, loving. Otherwise, you'd be more like me.
Yeah. Well, your mother's sweet and understanding. You should say that. But bottom line is,
she's watching.
She was precious. She was a great mediator. Dad was super tough. I mean, the first time I ever said...
Usually that's the case.
No.
In my family, that was completely opposite.
Okay, right, the opposite. Well, it can happen either way, but I'll never forget. I was 32 years old before I ever told Dad I thought he was wrong. And I thought his false teeth was going to fly out of his mouth, because I'd gone home to visit, and, I'm working. I don't, never used them anyway, and I said something to him, and he was grinding on this deal. And I said, Dad, that's just not the case. And I thought he was, his teeth were going to fly out of his head, because he was so shocked that I would say that. But he gained some respect for me for that. And of course, we never didn't have a good relationship. We always had a great relationship, but he had a narrow path, but he was solid in that narrow path, if you know what I mean.
After you've worked and ran the store for 10 years in Sherman, are you more middle class than your parents? Are your parents poor? I mean, how are they proud of you? Have you moved to a level at age 33, that they can look at?
My dad was so proud of me. Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. I mean, my parents were, we didn't have much. I mean, we didn't have new cars and all that kind of stuff. We had granddad's car when he got tired of it or whatever, but we didn't know that much about status because we lived on a farm, and all the other kids, they weren't much different than we were. I mean,
it's like J.B. Smith.
Yeah.
J.B. said, we didn't know we were poor.
No, we did not know.
In Arkansas, everybody around us was the same way.
They were all the same, but they were great people. It just that we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have any money, but whatever.
But you were happy, it seems like.
We didn't know.
And you get to this point, and what year is this after you've been there 10 years and you're 33 years of age there in Sherman?
Well, here's the deal. I was 23, and I was actually 22, and I opened my first store in 79. So it wasn't quite 10 years.
Yeah, we're just trying to get some ballparks.
But I was in Sherman when I opened the store because I came. Let me give you a little history about Tyler.
We're about to talk. We're about, just so the listeners know, we're about to talk how and why you left Sherman and opened your first store in Tyler, Texas.
Got it.
That right? That's
exactly right.
All right. You tell us how that all unfolds in 1979?
Well, here it was in 1968. I met a guy from Tyler named George O'Shea. His dad, the family was it
was the Toyota dealership.
They owned the Toyota dealership, and back then it was Toyota and Oldsmobile.
Right.
And actually, I think they had Mercedes in the 70s, but that's when that happened. But long and short, George O'Shea, I met him
at a bar.
You want to know how I met him?
I mean, everybody knows that because he used to come over to my house.
Okay.
In those years. I mean, everybody knows he liked to party.
Yeah, he was great. Some kids had picked me up to join a fraternity because I was, I worked in this clothing store, so they picked me up to be in a fraternity, and I was going to a meeting one night, and in my little apartment complex, this brand new Oldsmobile Cutlass was parked parallel behind my car, and I went, "What the heck? The car's running, windows down."
He was in there.
He wasn't in it. He was going up the steps across the apartment complex with something in his hand.
A bottle in a bag.
And I said, "Hey, buddy." And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Is this your car?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I'll be right back." Well, right back to him is about an hour and 15 minutes because I didn't wait that long. I waited about 15 minutes, so I just got in the car and backed it up, moved my car out and left. Well, the next day I'm walking across campus, and here comes this real cool-looking dude in a trench coat and da-da-da-da-da, and I passed him. I said, "Hello."
Did he go to Southeastern Oklahoma?
Yeah. He'd been to Texas. And
I mean, I knew he was a big Texas fan, like a lot of people in Tyler.
He'd been to Texas, and his grandparents lived in Durant at Southeastern. So he went down there and went to school there. So he's walking across campus, and I said hello to him. He turns around and said, "Hey." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Are you Harley?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Man, I'm George O'Shea." Well, that handshake changed my life. And I mean that sincerely. We were inseparable for 2 years until he went off to Vietnam. But we were inseparable.
I forgot that. He did go to Vietnam.
He went to Vietnam. He I think he went to Officer Candidate School. He went to Vietnam as an officer. I know that because he had a nice role over there.
Did he go into the country of Vietnam?
He was in Saigon. He drove either the general. He was a driver for either the general or one of the real high echelon.
He was always sliding into a cush job.
There was something about George.
I mean, look, you could not like him.
No, loved him.
Anybody who ever was around him, he always made you feel good.
He's great.
He was always in a good mood.
He's great. He's great. But
so,
anyway,
yeah,
so he kept talking about Tyler, Texas. And I said, I know about Tyler a little bit, but George, he said, you got to come down there. You just got to come down there. It's the greatest place. And he said, don't worry about getting into business. My family knows everyone, and they did.
They did.
And he said, my brother-in-law said People's Bank, which was Sam Wolf.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He said,
is that already his brother-in-law at that time?
Yeah. Yeah, they were already married and everything. So anyway, long story short.
Because, that's his sister, right?
Yeah.
Carrie.
Yeah. And then Dee Dee's married to John. Boofy.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Now you're putting it all together.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great family. I mean, it's an unbelievable family. And George was he was the wild child.
He was.
But he had a way about him, and he said, you got to come to Tyler. It's the greatest thing ever. So I was still working for these guys in Sherman, and they said, well, where do you want to, because we'd done real well.
They wanted you to open another store?
Yeah.
For them.
For them. And so they said, where would you open the store? Because Mike, the president of the company, was pretty bright. And he said, he could see the writing on the wall. I was either going to move on or they had to move me up a little bit.
Right.
And so he said, where do you want to go? He said, you want to go to Dallas? I said, no. I said, let's go to Tyler. So we got in the car and came down to Tyler, and we drove down Chilton.
In the Azalea District.
Yep. And there's these kids out here selling lemonade. And the trees were full. Everything's bloomed out.
Norman Rockwell moment.
Oh, it was unbelievable. I still have a visual of it in my mind. And I said, I'm coming to Tyler, Texas. Couldn't get the money, so I went back.
When you say couldn't get the money.
Well, I didn't have anything to get the money.
But your boss, the owner of these stores, did not want to front.
No. I was leaving the stores. I came in 1977 and told him that. The money deal came a little later. Looked at stores in 1977, and then when I opened my first store, I came and couldn't get the money in Tyler, but I had a guy that had shopped with me for 4 years in the store, and he'd come in at night because I worked 3 nights a week. We were in a mall, and he would come in once a week, and he'd go, when you going to open your store? And I said, well, Mike, I don't have any money. He said, all right, get some money. And I said, well, I'm trying. So this went on for 2 years. He came in one night with his wife, and he said, all right, how much you need?
How much did you need?
At that time, I needed $150,000 to get a store open.
79?
79.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're trying to, I mean, that's a lot of money, but
that's
for a clothing store, that seems like a lot of money back then just to open up.
That's what it took.
Because you just get you a space, and then you just have to buy inventory.
Well, we got a space, but it was a vacant. Well, anyway, I couldn't get the money here because I had no reputation here. I had 10 years basically.
Hey, I thought OJ said he could take care of it.
Yeah, it wasn't quite that easy, but his intentions were good.
No question, they were pure.
No, the intentions were pristine. He just couldn't pull that off. Right. And
they said, now, OJ, this is one of your buddies?
Yeah. Well, not only that, this is your relative and you can't do this.
Yeah.
But they said, when we were talking about it, they said, well, what do you have? And I said, well, I got a car note. I got a house note. And they said, and that's what you have? And I said, you got it. That's what I have. So anyway, that's why I couldn't get any money. But this guy in Van Alstyne, Texas, named Mike Hines, he said, how much you need? I'm going to loan you the money. And I said, Mike, you sure you're going to do this? He said, you're going to open your own store.
Why do you think he was motivated to help you?
Well, Chad, I treated him just like I treat you. And I mean, I took care of him for 4 years, he and his wife, and I worked.
And the relationship, that's what a good relationship is.
The relationship grew, and we don't have enough time in this podcast to tell you that relationship. It never ended.
He had a lot of faith in you. He knew you were going to be successful, and he liked you.
Well, I don't know that he knew I was going to be successful, but he knew I was going to take care of him. And when I say that, he had enough faith in my ability to loan me the money. And it was a family-owned bank, which back in the 70s,
they could control those loans real easy.
Yeah, his dad owned the bank. He was my age exactly.
That caught people into trouble in the early 80s.
Yeah, big time, and it got all of us in trouble. But the long story short, he took care of me, and he was dedicated throughout the rest. And when I got ready to move to from Sherman to Tyler, he said, "Man, are you sure you want to do that?" And I said, "Mike, I have to. Sherman just isn't. It just doesn't have
Sherman
enough.
is not the spot, is it?
It's not the spot. It doesn't have, I'd studied the income. I'd studied the demographics of Tyler at that time.
Doctors had money.
It was
built-in shoppers.
It was Tyler, Texas, or Midland, and I'd already been close to Midland.
Yeah.
So we're out on that. Tyler had green trees and grass, and money. And when I say money,
you had old money and you had good incomes.
Had lots of old money. So and people traveled here. It was a whole different demographic.
They were more cosmopolitan.
Totally.
For East Texas.
Totally.
Right? I mean, that's kind of Tyler's reputation.
Yeah, very cosmopolitan.
You get the money. You get the space. Is this the space on Amherst?
Yeah. Where your dad came in.
First time I ever met you when I was a kid. I don't know if I was in middle school or early.
No. You were in ninth grade.
All right, that's what I'm saying. I was right there.
Yeah.
When he would be taking me. Yeah. And I just still remember you over in that far corner of that strip center.
Yeah, that's right.
And you called it J. Curls?
Yeah, J. Curls.
Because I remember
J. Curls. Again, I didn't want my name on it.
All right. This is in your shy period where you're not confident enough to be.
Exactly.
Hey, I'm Harley.
If you put it in those words, exactly.
All right.
That's right.
Hey, Chris, what do we have on that J. Carl slide? Because it's hard to find old stuff. All right. So we found an Old English Village. I was right. That's on Amherst.
Oh, my gosh.
Here's a sale, 20 to 33.5% off Friday and Saturday only. But J. Carl's, Harley, tell us where and why you picked that name.
Well, J. Carl's, a lot of us have other lives before this life. And when I was in Sherman, I met a girl, and she was a great girl. We're still friends. And she had a little boy. He was 10 months old. And he is still in my life after 50 years or whatever it is.
Yeah,
and his name was Jesse Carl.
All right.
And so I pegged that, and I said, I'll just name it after you. And I named it J. Carl's. And that's where that name came from.
And that name, remained for a long time.
Yeah.
You were in that spot in the Old English Village for about how long before you moved?
Well, it was real strange. We hit town at a very opportune time. There was a lot of money being exchanged around, a lot of building going on. Interest rates were very high, like in the 14s and 15s.
Right, they were high.
They were very high. But there was a lot of money being spent, and there was a lot of money in banks. So when I got to town, there were a number of bankers that saw what we were doing. We had Ralph Lauren. We brought Ralph Lauren to Tyler.
You had it from...
We were at J. Carl's, we had Ralph Lauren in Sherman, so we brought it to Tyler, Texas with us, because Ralph was real hard to get back in the 80s. They were very selective about who they gave. How I got it, I have no idea.
Yeah, was it the influence of the guy that had the 4 or 5 stores in Sherman, or were you completely getting this on your own?
I did it on my own. The stores that I worked for that had the 5 stores did not have Ralph Lauren.
Okay.
But I was bound and determined to get Ralph Lauren. So I campaigned
because that was hot back then.
It was hot.
I mean, remember the Polo store in Highland Park Village?
It was
Stu.
The bomb.
You remember Stu?
I remember Stu well.
Guy Danielson,
I know.
He literally led the charge of Polo back to Tyler.
I know. Well, Guy Danielson was actually part owner in that store.
In the one on Old English?
No, in the one in Dallas, the Polo store.
I did not know that, but
Yeah.
that makes sense because my dad and him and Donaldson were friends.
That's right.
My dad was always trying to drag us up to the Polo store.
That's right.
And, you know.
It was part of their repertoire. I mean, they loved that store and should. I mean, it's a
funny.
beautiful store.
It is. They've moved it. You know, it's moved around. I don't even know if it's in Highland Park Village anymore. I don't think it is.
They took it out of Highland Park and put it on Knox Henderson.
That's right. I went into that store.
And it's pretty cool down there. But why that store was a landmark in Highland Park Center.
Right.
I mean, it was the bomb.
I mean, there was Dallas Cowboys.
It was
they were shopping in there.
That's right. People went there. They went to Highland Park Village to go to the Ralph Lauren store.
How does Danielson ever get any interest, you know, financial interest in the Ralph Lauren brand store?
He and I can't remember all the names. There were three or four guys that actually promoted. Danielson and were in Norman, Oklahoma.
Right. I mean, all those guys came from Oklahoma.
From OU.
Right.
And so Danielson, I'm pretty sure, worked at Harold's, which Harold's was the store in Oklahoma.
You think he was in clothing sales in college or medical school?
Yes.
Okay.
And
so y'all have that kind of in common, and you're both from Oklahoma?
Yes. Yeah. So what happened was, you know, at Harold had huge influence in the clothing business all over Oklahoma, all over Texas and Oklahoma. But the bottom line is that Harold, I think, pushed those guys a little bit. So if you're going to go do this might be what you want to think about or whatever. They may have a different, you know, story about that. But someone put them in contact to bring the Ralph Lauren store to Highland Park Village. So they got involved in that and got the store to Highland Park. That's how it got to.
Guy was a doctor when that store opened, wasn't he? He was already practicing in Tyler.
Yeah, he was already a doctor.
But there was a relationship that carried over from his time at Harold's.
I'm pretty sure he had some, contacts with that. Someone put those guys together, and I'm not going to say who they were because I don't know. But anyway, guys told me the story. I just don't remember it verbatim. But anyway, they ended up helping or getting that store to Highland Park. Well, the Highland Park store ballooned them. It was like our little Polo shop here in Tyler. It went crazy, and that store went double crazy.
Well, why don't you put that in the wealthiest neighborhood in the state of Texas? Just about, right? You drop a Polo store on the edge of where Jerry Jones now lives.
Right. Yeah, right down the street. Actually, yeah, it all has some connections. But Ralph Lauren was the thing that kind of put us on the map here, along with Donaldson, your dad. Tea Garden.
I mean, my dad wasn't buying like Danielson and Donaldson.
Well,
my dad always liked he loved clothes. He loved to look sharp. Yeah. He was always focused on his appearance.
He was one of those guys. I mean,
more so than
that.
me. Even.
Well, Donaldson brought your dad in, and then it just ballooned from there. You know, Dr. Teagarden and Lundy and all those guys started falling in there.
All right.
And and then within a year and a half, we'd outgrown the store. And so that's when we built the store out, where Susie Robinson was.
It's where, if people who listen to this and aren't from here but know Susan Robinson, you're about to go to that space and occupy that.
Yeah.
It's already built.
No, I built it.
Okay.
But I had a guy that promoted us, wanted us to be there. So he built the store, and I did the interior.
The build out.
Yeah, I did the build out.
You have this existing structure, and they say if you lease it, you have to build it out.
Yes.
Right? Because it was very much like a Polo store in Dallas.
It looked really, we emulated a lot of those stores. I mean, we were good copiers at the time. I mean, we kind of got our own deal going later, but we were copying stores that were successful and so on and so forth.
Back then, that fit the kind of the Tyler Smith County is more cosmopolitan, more,
Yeah.
more like
Yeah.
Dallas. And did you find yourself getting a lot of business
Yes.
from the outlying cities
Exactly.
coming in?
That store was the real door opener for us, me at that time. It was a nice store.
It was a nice store.
It was a nice store, and we had Ralph Lauren, and we had these lines, and we had good people. We had Charles Hampton and those guys.
Clay Simpson.
My goodness.
I mean, I remembered him from those days.
Clay Simpson was, he was awesome.
There was other guy, Jimmy something or another.
We had guys go through either in college or
they were always younger, kind of good looking guys.
Yeah, we had some great guys, and we still have great guys. But long and short of it is, I guess Clay and Charles were the real landmarks of the store besides me. And we always had some cute girls working in the ladies' store and all that.
I was about to say, people that don't realize you had women's clothing at that time, didn't you?
We did. There was a girl from here. Her name was Debbie Harrington at the time.
Right. Oh, and I live in her house.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Right now.
Okay.
Isn't that? Or there's some connection Debbie has with the house that I live in now because she told me about it.
Okay. Yeah.
But that was Debbie Harrington. Would be Debbie Howard.
Debbie Howard.
Right.
Exactly.
So she was in fashion.
She came to me and she said, if you're going to do this store, she said, I've always wanted to do a ladies store. And I said, well, she said, but I can't do it by myself. And she said, would you be interested in doing it with me? Well, at that time, there was so much borrowing power, with things, with moving kind of at a fast pace.
Anytime it's so easy to borrow money, there's a bad ending to the story.
I'm surprised you. Yeah,
I remember my dad.
I hope you haven't been there.
No, I have not. And it's one of the reasons, I'll tell you this, I'm very conservative. I pay off everything, okay?
Yeah.
And I just remember my dad in the 80s and the stories about friends that got caught up.
Wow.
And you know what I mean?
Oh, I know exactly what
some went to prison.
Yeah.
Some went completely broke.
Yep.
And he was buying somebody's Rolex from him.
Yep.
I just remember how hard that was for some people.
I would say you could take the bankruptcies from 1986 to 1990 and put those bankruptcies and take the whole history of Tyler, Texas, and probably not top that number. That's how many people went bankrupt. But a lot of those people, and I'm not being critical, were in situations where they could go bankrupt and it didn't change their lives. They were
the laws were different.
Doctors.
Right. The lawyers were different where you could, the bankruptcy laws have changed, but back then you could file for bankruptcy, eliminate. If you had a good salary, you could just keep on going.
You keep on going. And the only ones that it really had a big effect on were people like myself that lived on borrowed money.
Right. And the borrowed money bought the clothes that had to get sold.
We couldn't go bankrupt. I'm not saying I would have.
No,
but
I know.
We couldn't.
Yeah, because, you're looking at borrowing money, interest on that money, making a decision on inventory that has to be liked by the public and bought with a margin that is whatever that margin is. Right. And then a commission to the salesman that carves that number even smaller.
Right. It chips away fast.
So,
it really does. Yeah.
But you're in the middle of this big borrowing and you say, okay, Debbie, we'll borrow some more money.
Let's go borrow money. And we borrowed money and did the store. Well, we ran this store together for about a year and a little over a year. And she was going through some, people have things that happen to them in
everybody
life.
In the city
everyone
could sit here and say, a lot of people that there's ups and downs, there's changes in people's lives that, and that happens to people and it knocks them off their game temporarily.
It did. And she said, I got to get out. And so I said, no problem. And so I took her out of the deal and we ran the store. That's where
you brought in Julie Donaldson.
Yeah. Well, I had Julie Donaldson. Yeah.
I remember.
Golly, that's great. I can't remember.
I'm a historian of Tyler.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Ron Donaldson, Julie, there's probably a connection there.
The very definite connection.
And I remember Julie was sweet.
Fabulous,
always.
fabulous
she had
girl.
The salesperson's
she
spirit.
was terrific. She was. Julie was amazing. But in those years, every one of those girls worked with us at one time or another. Sandra,
right?
Sarah, and Eve.
Whitney
worked. He worked a little later, but all that whole family basically worked in
all the kids, all the Donaldson kids worked at J. Crowell's at one
time.
Is there any other family in Tyler that can say that?
I don't know.
I mean, I don't think there is.
I don't know. But it was a great time. I mean, it was a very educational time, but we made a lot of friends and
things were going well.
Things were going well until 87.
Right. And that was after this tax law that was passed in 86.
Yeah.
And then it kind of stopped everybody.
You have to understand the oil industry went to crap in a handbasket, and we had so many people that depended on that source of income, and then a lot of those people, which were young people, but they didn't work and they had income. So that population almost vanished in our store. So this number that we were kicking Bobo with went to about half that. And with that, comes people looking for money, and it gets really difficult because it can happen so fast. I mean,
you're saying demands on you to repay loans.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's funny what you mentioned. It brought to mind a couple of podcasts that we've had, including one with Scott Martinez, Tyler Economic Development Council. You mentioned George Auger was pivotal in your life, but this crash that you're talking about led to Tom Mullins coming and forming the Tyler Economic Development Council in 1989 with the sole purpose and mission to diversify away from the oil and gas industry in Tyler.
I remember every bit of that.
Right?
Tom Mullins was amazing.
But you just described how it could be feast or famine if the economy did not spread out, right?
Exactly. It didn't diversify until the 90s.
Right. It didn't happen overnight.
We didn't have the medical industry and so on and so on and so on.
Right. No. But that was a goal. They were purposefully, intentionally trying to get that here.
That's right. And it was really a tough time. Matter of fact, we went broke. I mean, dead broke.
Yeah. I mean, because J. Crowell's ends at some point.
It closed in let me think about it. Was it 87 or 88? So that store, we opened out there in 83 and we closed it in 88. There's a lot in between there, but the bottom line was it was basically because of the whole economic structure of East Texas was the direct effect on. I mean, we didn't do a lot different. We just didn't have the business, and of course banks were looking to us to pay the loans, and we didn't go bankrupt. We didn't do anything. We paid them off, but
you couldn't keep going with the payments that you owed, I guess, from credit, the lease, with the margins of the people that were coming in to shop after that.
Yeah.
Right? It was just really a numbers game, right?
It was a numbers game. And it happened to a lot of people.
It did happen to a lot of people.
It happened to lumber yards.
Yeah.
It happened to not just retail stores like mine, but, going out of business was the only reason I went out of business.
Was to regroup?
Is to regroup.
Right.
Because I never, ever planned on staying out of the business. I just had to get out of debt. And to get out of debt, sometimes you have to make some serious decisions. And that was one of them.
So you get out of debt, I'm assuming, before we go to, another era called the Suit Club era, right? And, when we talk about how difficult it is to get out of debt, and the money that has to be made, we have to look at the prices of the clothing to see where the money would come from.
Right.
And when we look at suits that are $299 for a suit, I mean, one must wonder how many suits have to be sold.
But Chad, if you'll remember, when that all happened, there was the guys in Dallas promoting, there was the men's warehouse, everything was promotional. Everything went promotional. The only ones that weren't promotional was Neiman Marcus and the Polo Shop.
When you say promotional, you mean marketing a discount.
Discount.
That's right.
And so Clay Simpson and I sat down at my breakfast room table, and I said, Clay, we're going to address this.
Clay went with you to the suit club.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Clay's he was right there.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you speak fondly of him, and I do remember him at the suit club.
He was amazing.
When did the suit club open, Harley?
We opened that in 1990. We weren't closed, but maybe 6 months. 3 to 6 months. We had to regroup and find inventory. The way I did it, we didn't have any credit, at that time. And
right, because you're coming off this thing.
We're coming off of
you're looked at as a poor credit risk.
I'm a very poor credit.
Right, I mean, just not being ugly. But
no, you're not being ugly.
The business
you're being
world,
honest.
And it's a barrier that you've got to figure out to get back in business.
Right. So I got to figure out how to get back in business. So I go to New York, spend a week up there. I go to every one of my major manufacturers, and I said, look, guys, y'all are having trouble shipping people. I know you are, because all my friends are in the same ship that I'm on. And here's how I want to do it. I'm going to start a new company called the Suit Club, and it's going to be promotional because I got to live through this promotional age. I got to figure out how to get through it. But I'm going to have better goods, but I'm going to do it on consignment. I can't get credit. You can't give me credit, but you're going to give me inventory out of this warehouse full of inventory that you have.
That you're not moving anyway.
That you're not moving anyway. You're pretty bright. And you're going to give me that inventory, and I'm going to pay you every week for what I sell.
But, I mean, that's genius in a way. I mean, talk about no place to go. Right? Except for what you just said. And I don't know if somebody else was doing this or you just thought this is the only road I have forward.
It's the only road I had. And Clay and I sat there, we designed the logo, and we came up with the name, and we put it out there. And Clay helped me for a long time. But kind of a neat part of this story was that
I mean, you're even open on Sunday.
Yeah, we'd open anytime somebody come.
You were working, right? I mean, most time you don't see a clothing store open Sunday 1 to 5, right? I mean,
we were trying everything to keep the cash flow going.
We're between Jason's Deli and Foley's. I mean, you got it. I remember that little spot. It reminded me of Amherst.
That's right.
You'd gone full circle back to the beginning.
It couldn't be further hid back in there than that spot.
You weren't getting much roof advertising.
Well, there's none. There was Bill Dickens, and he tried an Oxford clothing store here when things were really great in the 70s. And Bill was a great salesman and a good merchant, but Oxford clothing at that time was $3,500 to $5,000. That's back in the 70s.
For a suit?
For a suit.
Okay, and that's a far cry from $299.
Yeah, so he closed that store, and that was the only store that was finished out that I could just slide in. And so I slid into that.
Probably didn't have a lease.
I had a lease, but I took it on an annual lease, and I had a year there. And then a person that has passed away came to me and promoted this place where we were across the street with the Suit Club. But the Suit Club, what was interesting...
where was this place across the street?
Well, where I was on Old Bullard and next to Brookshire's.
Oh, you're talking...
where I was for 15 years.
Did Suit Club move again?
Yeah. Well, the Suit Club moved over there, and we were there for 15 years before Bridget and I built the shop.
Right. But I'm trying to visualize this place, and this was in the place that there's a salon or something, right? Where is it? Brookshire's in Shiloh?
Well, okay. Shiloh, well, it's right on that corner, right behind that building. Used to be the dry cleaners. That next building, there was a little restaurant there, a little crab house or something like
Breakers.
that. Breakers, yeah.
But next to Breakers, that's where the Suit Club went.
Yeah,
and
that's where we went.
All right.
And we stayed there for 15 years.
And you referenced somebody that passed away. Did they help you in some way?
Well, the real estate guy did. He came to me and said, you need a bigger place and you need to get out of this corner. And I said, well, it's going to be tough. He said, well, I think I can help you. And he did. And I'm embarrassed. I can't think of his name. But he's the one that promoted that space. And we ended up moving over there. And I went in and painted at night and got it all slicked up a little bit because it was an auto shop, because that's what he did, a BMW aftermarket's auto shop.
Harwood?
Yeah. He did mufflers and stuff like that. There were brake pads everywhere. But anyway, long story
Bill
short.
Day? No.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
I'm trying to jolt the name out of the guy that.
I'm trying to think myself.
But if you think of it, you can say it. But if not, it's okay.
Yeah.
What I wanted to ask you that I didn't, did Bridget ever work at J. Curl's?
Yeah. She didn't work at J. Curl's, but when we had the ladies store, she ran the ladies store after Debbie left.
Is she the lady that ran it you're talking about?
Well, Debbie
after Debbie
opened it, and then Bridget came on. I heard Bridget. She was at Mary V's, and Bridget came out one day. We already knew each other pretty well, and she came out one day and she said, "Okay, no." She went to work for Marshall Wells at the end of the shopping center where we were. And she came to me one day and she said, I'm thinking about making a move. Would you be interested in putting me in this store? And I said, I'm not going to get between women and because Marsha was a friend. She said, well, I'm either going to Mary V's or coming here. And I said, well, you're coming here. And that's where it all started.
So,
and that was 1987.
All right. So 1987, for the viewers, Bridget is Bridget Mansell. For those that don't know, Bridget Mansell and I went to Andy Woods, Hubbard, and Robert E. Lee our entire time. I can remember her mom, Pat, dropping off John Paul and Bridget. And so that's how long I've known her. 1987 was the year after we got out of high school.
Yep.
And so Bridget went immediately into retail clothing, I'm assuming.
Oh, she was already in it.
We're going to have her on this show at some point in the future, but because people know her store, I'm sure if they know Bridget's, they now know the connection between you and Bridget.
Yeah. She was amazing. She was the best at everything that we did in the retail business. I mean, she was amazing. And she started working in the retail.
Probably in high school.
She worked at Leon's, the shoe store, next door to where my store was. That's how I met her.
Okay.
And they put her in a pressing room or steam room, and she got out of that and then did lingerie and all this, and they put her on the floor. But she was a high school kid. And then when she graduated, y'all graduated in 86.
Yes.
And then 2 years later, she went to work at our store, or a year and a half later.
She gets there and it survives and then it closes.
Well, but it didn't close in 88. She was there a year or so. So we were closer to 90 because we started the suit club in 90. So it had to be 89.
I mean, I know it's been a long time.
That's a long time ago.
I mean, I'm just trying to get general benchmark, not hold you to the date.
Yeah, we're real close to
that. All right.
And so, but we got to be good friends in the 80s, and she ran the store, and she was awesome in the store. And the ladies store did real well. We just couldn't keep it all glued together.
Because women are good customers in Tyler.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we know that from the success Bridget had at her first store over there in Burkeville Center.
Right.
Because when the suit club emerges, she's not in the suit club.
No.
So she's got to do something else, right?
Yep. And so she came to me in 1992, and we were still friends. And
y'all weren't together?
No, we were not together.
Okay.
We were only together in the late 80s.
Spoiler alert. Eventually, Harley and Bridget get married and are together to this day.
No, we weren't married in the 80s, though. We were good friends in the 80s. And so she came to me in 1992 and said, okay, I'm opening my own store. I said, great. And so
it was a good store.
I always promoted her.
Yeah.
She was so good at it. And so I helped her with her open to buys and stuff like that. And we got her in the store. And that was where, she was on Burkeville, down that area.
Right there on Broadway.
So she did that store. And then lucky enough for me, life as it is.
The suit club did well.
Suit club did well. Well, we stayed in business. Let's put it like
Okay.
that.
Well, and back then, climbing out of the early 90s, that was a good thing
That was a good thing.
for retail.
It was. I mean, we had to stay in business, and the only way to stay in business was to come up with some avenue to sell merchandise. And it was pretty much about discount, but we had better goods. We had
You had a better discounted item.
we had a better discounted. We actually had Burberry and things like that
That were hung up in a warehouse somewhere.
hung up in a warehouse.
Well,
And we were getting that stuff and promoting it. Now, it wasn't like we were giving it away. Don't get me wrong.
No, I mean, you still had to make a
We had-
profit,
we
and
had
you had
to
to
make
pay
a-
back the guys on consignment.
We had to pay back everybody, we owed money to. But the bottom line was it worked. And so with that suit club concept, all my buddies started calling me going, "Hey, what the heck are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to stay alive." And they go, "Well, we need your help tell us what you're doing." So I put David Schellenberger in College Station. He jumped on and he started his suit club. And then we had Dr. Bourne, James Bourne in Midland. He started his suit club.
When you say they started them, have you monetized this for yourself in a franchise? Are you a part of the deal? What's going on?
These guys were all such good friends.
You just helped them.
I just helped them. I mean, we just kind of put them in, helped them get the same concept working in their stores. And to this day, two of them are still suit clubs.
But I mean, would you run the suits through your
No.
shop to them and make a little bit of a markup?
No. I took them to New York and introduced them to the people that we were doing business with. And those guys made their own determination whether they wanted to do business with these guys. But they were all good guys. They all had the same business philosophy. So really, we just we used the suit club. When I say used, we tied all of our stores together for buying power.
Okay, I
You
knew.
Because
There has to be an angle here, and we've just come to it.
Yeah. We
Volume discount.
Volume discount.
All
And
right.
so not only did we get help from these people, but we started buying our own goods.
You could get away from the discounted
We
items.
started moving away from that.
You could get a name brand.
Yeah.
So the suit club was it was getting watered down with better product.
It just we kept moving to a better place. And as we moved to that better place, we got away from
Discount.
the discounts and we got away from the consignment goods. We started buying our own goods, but we did it as a group. We all went to market together. We all did it as a group, and we stayed that group for quite some time. What happened was after we got the 5 stores together and everybody's kind of breathing a little bit.
Is this joint credit at this point?
No, we don't have any credit.
Okay, I was wondering if you guys had built a history with these 5.
They were basically looking at me, but I didn't have any money. But I had set the deal up, and the people knew all of these guys. These guys are all reputable guys. They were all in Texas, and Texas stunk at that time. So after we got the suit club kind of cranked up, there was another phase to this. Guy from New York found out about the suit club, and he said, "What are you doing?"
That's my trademark.
And I said, "What?"
No. I was anticipating somebody called you and go, "Hey, I've got this suit club name trademarked or something."
Oh, no. He calls me and he says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to stay alive, And he said, "Well, you're doing what we do." And I said, "Well, what do you do?" He said, "We finance stores like yours." He said, "I'm going to come out there and see it." I said, "Well, now look, I'm kind of okay with what we're doing." He said, "Well, you're not okay because we have access to everything." And they did. They already had like 17 stores that they did this with. He was from Miami but lived in New York, and so he flew out. And so he told me the concept, and it was pretty. It kept us alive. He got a percentage.
Okay. How does he win? He gets a percentage
of everything that we sell.
It's his money instead of bank money.
It's his money instead of bank money, and he gets a percentage of gross sales. It's kind of like a financial shark type thing, but
That would be a loan shark.
He had all the inventory.
There was no kneecap breaking or anything.
He had money from Washington. These real estate people funded him, so he could buy anything. So we didn't have to worry about buying new lines and getting back into business. We just had to pay for it. So all 5 stores, he came for a week. I took him to 3 out of the 5. I didn't go to Midland. And we got to the airport. He's fixing to get on a plane. We hadn't talked about whether he was going to do it, whether he wasn't going to do it. And I said, well, what do you think? He said, I'll do your store and College Station. I said, Dale, it's not going to work. I said,
why do you care at this point?
Because these guys are friends.
But I mean, it's one thing to be friends, and I have friends. It's another thing that, these stores stand alone based on the people that are in them and the markets, right?
Yeah.
So why would you jeopardize capital for guys in other places?
These guys got on board with the Suit Club concept because of me.
All right. They got on board. So how did they help you to create this loyalty that I can see that's coming out of you?
Well, we had been friends 15 years before that, before we all went broke, basically. We'd been friends back in the 70s. So they all were I know how it sounds.
I'm wondering, why couldn't that store that didn't get credit from this guy from Miami and New York just go get their own at this point or stay on the consignment model?
Well, here's the deal. He got on the plane. I said, I'm not going to do it unless you do all of them.
I mean, you're a card player.
Well, I was.
You bluffing. You didn't even have a hand.
I had no hand.
You didn't have a hand. No. The guy finally said, fine, call.
I got a deuce and a king or something, I mean. And so he got on the plane, left, and called me back. It was less than 2 weeks later. He had his main guy who I'd met. He called back and said, we're going to do all of them. And so they did all the stores, and we did all those stores, stayed in business with him for almost 10 years. And then when I came out of it in 1999.
You came out of that financing?
I came out of all of it. I mean, my life, I paid off all the loans business loans and everything, the mistakes that I had made. It took me 9 years. And I paid one of the things that they wanted, the big New York group they wanted a Dallas store. They like big cities and they wanted to be in Dallas. So my banker in Van Alstyne, Texas loaned me, which I didn't have anything again, enough money to put in a store. And this is where friendships didn't work out. A friend of mine.
That's why I'd cautioned you about the other stores.
Yeah. A good friend of mine, and God rest his soul, he came.
Do we know him?
Huh?
Who is he?
You don't know him.
Oh, okay.
He was from Sherman, and he came to me and he said, look, you got anything I can do? And I said, it's a tough time. He said, I know, but man, I'm dire straits.
Did he know anything about the clothing business?
He had been in business. He had worked for me at one time. Oh. And I said, would you want to run the Dallas store? He said, heck yeah, I'll run the Dallas store. So I put him in that store, borrowed the money to do it. And little did I know, we were selling clothes like crazy. We were on Preston Road and Alpha. I mean, right there in the heart of things.
Yeah.
In kind of North Dallas. And things were rocking. And I went down there one day and I said, hey, where's the money?
I was about to say that.
And he started crying.
He was a gambler. He had a cabinet. He got divorced. You didn't know it.
He could have had all those problems, but he was a roller. He got in with the Cowboys and did some shows and did some stuff like that. And he was spending money.
Your money.
Yeah. So I called New York, and they said, uh-oh. So they flew down the next day and shut him down. Took all of his merchandise, boxed it up, sent it back to New York. Then the guy that helped me get into business with these guys. He came to the store and he said, well, it's not as bad as you think. And I said, well, how bad is it? And he told me, and I went, how can you say that's not bad? He said, well, he said, you have this much in reserve. He said, so we're taking that because we had to set up a reserve account for every, and then you owe us this. So 9 years from that day, I paid it all off.
All right. What I hear is a man who's in debt from people from New York.
Mm-hmm.
He's also, for some reason, very motivated to pay these people back. There's also links to organized crime and the garment district. And so one has to worry, you know, before the crackdowns in New York, you know, you wonder if, you know, you had that fear in any way, not knowing anything, whether or not the people that wanted their money, you know, might be more insistent than the local bankers.
Here's the thing. These guys really were quite motivated, but they had the money and they weren't bad people. The guy I actually worked with, we're still friends. Actually, to make a full circle.
Yes, let's connect the dots.
I loaned him some money to help him. He has his own stores in Manhattan now, and he was having some trouble.
You loaned him money.
I loaned him money.
I mean, you just got out from underneath everything.
Don't get me wrong. It wasn't that kind. It wasn't big money.
Okay, good.
It was little money.
Because I mean, it sounds like 1990 when Y2K doesn't crash the cash registers. I mean, you're in the clear finally for once in 15 years.
It really kind of, I had to pay these guys off. My bank was involved. The guy that put me in business, he was the guy, you know, every attorney friend that I had said, declare bankruptcy. You don't have a choice.
Right.
And I said, guys,
hey, everybody does it. That's what they said.
They did. They said everyone does it. And so there was a guy,
stigma.
I'll tell you the guy's name, Roger Sanders in Sherman, Texas. He's a good attorney. He's probably retired, but he called me every name in the book, said, you're stupid, you're this, you're that. And he said, declare bankruptcy. I said, Roger, I can't. The banker that put me in business is the one I owe the most money to. And he said, you'll never get it done. I said, I will. And he said, you can't. Not with the way business is now and da-da-da-da. I said, Roger, watch me. He said, how long do you think it'll take? I said, oh, I'll be out in 5 years. Just like doing a jail sentence, I'll be out in 5 years. And he said, no way. And so he agreed to take care of Dallas and work those things out that guy had done. And then I started paying. Went to the guy that took me to the cleaners. I found him in Dallas. We'd been friends for 25 years. Found him in the World Trade Center, and I said, can we talk? And he said, yeah. I said, where? He said, in the bathroom. So we went to the restroom, and I said, Larry, we've been friends for 25 years. We can't let this kill this friendship. So here's what I'm going to do. If you'll pay me $200 a month until you get back on your feet where you can help me pay this off, I will never say a word. You know how many I got?
None.
So I did it. I'm not bragging, but I did it myself. And we finished it up in 1999. And that's when Bridget and I started our lives, you know, pretty much.
When did you get married to Bridget?
In 1999.
All right.
Things changed dramatically.
Before we jump and go forward from 2000, I want to ask you about your perspective. You know, I lived in a neighborhood in a cul-de-sac where one of my best friends, Vance Hughes, his dad, Cliff Hughes, was what's known as a traveling salesman.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He carried suits in the back of his car. I remember seeing it.
Yeah.
And we saw a dramatic impact at one point where that job was almost like a travel agent, where it disappeared.
Yeah. And it did.
I mean,
yeah.
And
that it got too expensive for what they were, you know, for how they were doing it. You know, they'd go store to store to store.
Discounts.
Discount.
Right?
Yeah.
Discounts killed the traveling salesman.
It killed that guy. It really did.
Well, I think people listening to this can see how difficult it was to navigate from the early 80s to the end of the 90s. And, thankfully for you, you did that. You thrived, you met you knew Bridget, but you got married. And then how is it that, the concept of Harleys, did you build confidence from surviving the bankruptcy so that you would then call something Harley's instead of the Suit Club or somebody else's?
No, Bridget was the instigator of Harley's.
It's like my wife. They always push us to do things that we don't want to do.
What in the world are you calling this a Suit Club? It's not the Suit Club, it's Harley's. And she said, and so she kept pounding that into me. She said, people come to Harley's. They don't come to the Suit Club. They come to Harley's. Get rid of that name. And I said, okay. So we did. And that was kind of how that all started. But
you moved in when?
We built this building in 2006. We moved in 2007. But the life-changing, I'd already been through HELL. So in 1999...
What did Winston Churchill say about when in hell? He said, just keep going.
I'll be honest with you. One thing that I can say to all the young people and people that have ambition, you can't ever say, I might not make it. You can't ever even think it. You can't even let it cross your mind. That's one thing that I never, ever, ever said or thought about. Is I just kept going to work every day. And a lot of those days were super tough. I mean, they were really rough, but I did it a day at a time. And then once you get past the day at a time, it gets better. It gets to a week at a time, and then a month, and then a year, and then you're off and running. But it takes time.
Paying everybody back, was that basically to save your retail life? That is, if you didn't do that, you'd never have credit, you'd never be in the business? Or was it just simply an echo of what your father was like, that, you said you'd do something?
It was the latter. Had nothing to do with that other.
Yeah, that is. A lot of people, the harder it gets, the harder that is to stick with.
Yeah. Well, don't get me wrong. I'm not a superstar but I mean,
I always thought you were a moral pillar of the community.
Well,
I've always tried to follow your lead, Harley.
You might want to rethink that, but long story short, it was from in here is what made me pay those. I didn't have to pay them back.
Right. I know you didn't.
I could have
figured out an easy way.
I could have figured it out, but there was no easy way out. And I got to tell you this. I tell people, I've told a couple people this, but after that Dallas deal fell apart and I owed all this money, well, the attorney in Dallas that was kind of working me through this, where I wasn't going to spend time. He was working out, radio advertising and stuff like that, which we did. We agreed to pay a certain amount to all these people, which we didn't have to, but we did. But there were a few people that were upset about that whole thing because they didn't know me and didn't know Tyler. They just knew him and how he had kind of taken them for a ride. And so if there was I'd drive by that store, and if there's a white constable's car there, I'd drive on. There was a lot of mornings I couldn't address him. It was just that tough. But he'd come in at 5:30 and go, Mr. Hooper, I'm so sorry. I said, you're doing your job. Just keep doing your job. But I said, some mornings, and it wasn't every day or anything, but I said, some days I just can't deal with that. And he said, I get it. He said, you don't mind me coming in at 5:30? I said, not at all. I said, at the end of the day, you're fine. And it didn't happen but a couple of times. But he was such a nice man. And there were just days like that you would just go, holy cow, I can't do this today. But I went to work, kept smiling, and it worked out. I mean, it just did. I'm so lucky, Chad.
I'm thankful for you. I really am. I know. I mean, because I just remember all of that at a time when I was in my 20s, 30s, and My dad talked about it a lot, and he hurt for the people that it affected because, being a lawyer, it really didn't, it didn't affect him like that.
Yeah.
But let's get to the Bridget Mansell marriage, would bring with it, a lot of attention when Johnny goes to Texas A&M, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I remember about that is my whole family was tailgating Texas A&M game. I think Johnny was there on a football visit, and I saw you and Bridget.
Yeah.
I look back in my mind, when I've seen you, and I didn't know him.
Yeah.
I'd heard he was at Kerrville Tivy.
Yeah.
He was an excellent player, and then all of that after that blew up. Really, my only question is not personal. It's really more, what was it like, for y'all to be a part of something like that where someone, really just exploded in the national consciousness?
I'll be honest with you, Chad, that was the most fun 2 years of my adult life.
When he beat Alabama?
Oh, my gosh. We went to every game. We happened to have some good friends, and we were fortunate enough they had a plane, and we went to every game.
And those Aggies, man, they're faithful.
Oh my gosh! And I mean, every game was just unbelievable. I mean, it was the most fun, and hey, Johnny made the game fun.
He did. I watched. I went
you're
to
a
Texas.
quarterback,
I watched A&M every Saturday that Johnny played, and I had walked on and been on the Texas Longhorns.
Yeah.
That's how exciting it was at the time.
Well, I knew you were a great player.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I just occupied a position.
Give yourself a little credit because I followed you too. But Johnny, it was a tough life for Johnny. We went out. And I don't want to get into all that, but
I'm not trying to get into personal.
No, I don't mean that.
I like your experiences.
My experience is watching this young guy, and we would go to lunch on Sunday after a game in College Station.
Yeah, you'd be mobbed.
It was ridiculous. There'd be a line on both sides of the walk where you walked out of a restaurant, 50 feet plus every time we walked out. And he just had no privacy whatsoever. I mean, it was crazy. And I don't know how I would have handled that.
That's what I say. You can't really judge people because this is the kind of experience that you do not know what you would do. You look back and say, golly, I wouldn't have done that or I would have done that, but you really don't know. And Johnny was he's kind of the crack in the dam on the NIL money stuff now. Yeah. Right? I mean, in a different era, Johnny
was just fine.
He would have made a lot of money. But that is an interesting thing. It's a Tyler connection. It's an East Texas connection to the show. Mm-hmm. Now, you and I don't know if you built this strip center that you occupy now, whether or not how that all works. And I'm not asking you to get into your financial background, but we know you get into a restaurant.
Yeah, that was different.
Hey, let's try two of the hardest things there is to survive.
Well,
retail,
trust me,
restaurant.
Retail's hard, but restaurant's tougher. What happened is that I talked Bridget into moving out to South Tyler, coming from Bergfeld Shopping Center to South Tyler, where she was.
Two heads are better than one.
Yeah. I said, Bridget, you and I need to put our stores together. And so I put the word out to 2 or 3 of my friends, real estate people, and that we wanted to find a piece of property we could build our stores on, just our stores. The intention was just the stores.
So you wanted to find a developer that would buy the land and build it out for you?
We were going to buy the land and build our stores.
Okay.
We'd done pretty well.
What about all the rest?
Well, all the rest came from the realtor that came to me. He said, found the land. I said, where?
Jimmy Lynn's old land.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it wasn't Jimmy Lynn's.
Not then, but in the past. Didn't he have that Mardi Gras way back?
Oh, no, that was next door. That was next door where the Taco Bueno is.
Oh, yeah.
It's right next door.
Because it was Tracy's had
Tracy's the one that did it first, and then that Mardi Gras deal. Yeah,
right.
that was a toughie.
I mean, golly,
yeah.
in the neighborhood, I mean, it was a bunch of bands and loud. I mean, I couldn't imagine what that'd be like.
The neighborhood hated.
Oh, they hated it.
Yeah, they hated it.
All right.
And that was one of the biggest problems we had getting our center put together. But anyway, so we bought. This person said there's a piece of land, the bank's in trouble, and it was Jacksonville Savings Loan at the time, or Franklin Bank, and they're fixing to do this. If you want it, there's a piece of land right here in front of them that you can buy. So I said, let's go look at it. So we went and looked at it. We drove on it. I'd never paid any attention to
it. It was
that.
right down from your place.
It was right there. And so we looked at it, drove it. He was in a truck, pickup, so we drove through it, got out, looked around, and I said, all right, how far does it go back? He said, behind that tree line. And I said, well, what do they want for it? He said, buy it. I said, okay. So I wrote him a check for, a deposit. And we got that land bought. And so Bridget and I, we got Fitzpatrick and Mike, to look at it. And so they started doing some plans on it.
Did you give them a concept?
Yes.
As to when we were looking at this, it was so unique.
Yeah.
As a strip center type piece of construction, we didn't really have this before.
What we did is we loved the Mediterranean type look. So we love the Bellagio in Vegas.
Right. I mean,
so we go out there and we take pictures of all nothing's original with us.
No, but the curved windows.
Yeah, we took all the pictures
the dome.
of the stores and things that we loved, and we brought them back, gave them to Mike, and Mike took them, and he did an illustration of it, and he said, what do you think? And Bridget goes, love it, but you need to raise the height 3 feet. And she started putting some dimension to it, and he said, those are expensive moves, head-ons. And she said, I don't care, we're going to do it. And so we started making these changes. Well, we owned that piece of property, so it was too big just for our 2 stores. So
right, because you just come off the street a little bit.
So we went ahead and developed to the bakery. We built those.
Okay.
And then the piece of property behind us came up. It was a separate piece of property, and it was large enough to put another 10,000 square feet on.
That is the stores across the back.
Hot Tots.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you all end up buying that?
We bought that piece of property and built that. And then the piece of property on the other side of it, the bank came to me and said, we're going to sell that piece of property behind us. And it was just woods at that time.
And what's on there now?
COM, which is Dermatology Associates. And it was large enough for 10,000 feet. So we did that. And then Prosperity took over the bank, or bought that bank. And that little, I don't know if you remember that bank building, but it was an ugly little bank building.
Is it where Dakota's?
Yeah. If you remember that. It was 5,800 square feet. It was just an ugly little 1970s red bank. So I called Kevin, my LTIF, my neighbor and friend. I said, what do I do? He said, buy it. He said, you got to have it. He said, to finish the shopping center, you got to have it. He said, they'll probably want more than you'll want to spend on it, but buy it. And I'll just be honest with you. I'll tell you what I said. I said, Kevin, are you there if I need you? He said, yeah, but you don't. He's such a good friend.
Yeah, no.
He said, you don't need me.
He'd scoop it up, though.
Yeah.
He would have scooped it up if you couldn't handle it. That's why he told you to buy it.
I'm not going to comment on that.
He knew he had a good friend there that had it. I'm not saying that because Kevin has made all the right moves himself.
He's made all the right moves. He's very, very...
And he's helped Tyler.
Yeah.
All joking aside, medical school wouldn't be here without him. There's a lot of stuff, Kevin. Half-cent sales tax, city improvements. I mean,
Kevin has been...
I'm not related to Kevin. He didn't ask me to shout him out.
I'm not related either, but I wished I were. He's a jewel.
Okay.
Anyway, we end up
with a big space.
With that bank building. So we go, we can't make it work. We're already paying way too much money for this property and that bank bill, and we got to blow it up. So we took it from 5,800 square feet and blew it up to 9,500 square feet. We took in the drive-in, the drive-through bank, and that's where Villaggio is.
Okay.
And then we went to Dakota's and Linda, and we talked to Linda and Steve, and they said, well, we're definitely going to move somewhere. And we showed them the plans.
Because they were in Jimmy Lynn's old place.
They were in Jimmy Lynn.
They had bought it from him.
That's right.
Right.
So anyway,
and that wasn't a very big place at all.
No. And it was really hard to get to and all that. So they said, yeah, we'll do that. And so they took 5,000 feet of it. And that left us they took 5,200 and built a beautiful restaurant. And then we kept the 3,800. And so we put it out on the market, and we had beer stores, taco stands. I mean, nothing that fit the shopping center.
Right. I mean, because that's the one thing, you say, okay, well, some people might say, or Dakotas might complain, hey, wow, there's two restaurants side by side, right?
It had to complement Dakotas.
Right. You did not want the wrong tenant.
Yeah, it would have ruined the whole thing. And we wanted the right tenant, but we wanted the more casual dining, and we wanted it to be a little more daytime type dining, pizza and all this sort of thing.
And maybe a little, cost friendlier.
Yeah, cost friendlier, right. All the above.
I mean, you have a history of discounted.
Yeah, I know how. And so anyway.
So that's how the restaurant came about.
Well, I went to Bridget. I said, Bridget, we're not getting the right people. And she said,
you needed a tenant?
What are you going to do? And I said, well, let me do this. And when it starts making money, we'll sell it. Are you listening? When it starts making money.
Understand that restaurant remained in business for an awful long time before recently.
Well, I owned it for 9 years. That tells you how long
recently
it took
before,
to make money.
Scott, right? Scott took it over.
Yeah, and he's doing a great job. But he
knows that business though.
He gets it.
FDs, hobbies, 12, Three Palms. I mean, he knows how to run them.
He gets it. He's a better operator than I ever even thought about being. He's done a fabulous job, and my hat's off to that guy. I mean, he's
well. At least you sold it when it was making money.
Yeah, I did. It made money the last year before I sold it, but he bought it and doing a great job. And then I don't know if you know this, but I don't even know if we should talk about this. But a month ago, I sold the shopping center.
I didn't know that, but I'm happy for you, especially if you made a profit.
We did good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, look, in Tyler, nobody should root against anybody.
Well, when I say we did good, we did what we needed to do,
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the reason that you take risks.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason you build this and take a chance, right? With the hope is someday that you'll somehow reap the profit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if you want to slow down.
Yeah.
Now all you have to do is focus on your store, right?
Yeah.
And
that's it.
Mrs. Harley Hooper, I'm sorry, that'd be Bridget. Bridget, we've talked about her store, but she has a great, probably one of the best, female clothing stores, and it's right next door to Harley's.
Yeah. She's done a terrific job. She's got great taste. She's a great salesperson. She gets it.
We can see the two stores connected.
Yeah.
I just don't like your parking because you gave it up to some open area instead of parking spaces.
I know.
You know what I mean? Like over there, you can't park there.
Well, you can always park. See where those guys are?
I
Just
do.
pull up in there.
Okay. There's no painted spaces.
We're not going to put any painted stuff, but all our friends know that they can park there.
And now, I don't know what your financing situation is and how you've come full circle, but it seems like you've kind of got your process or your systems in place now.
It's a lot different life than I had 25, 35 years ago. Yeah. We've been very blessed, and Bridget's been a major part of that blessing. When I say that, I mean talking about financial blessing. I mean, she's been a rock star.
She's a good earner.
She's a rock star. I mean,
she's no homemaker, huh? You're not necessarily the breadwinner.
Yeah, she really, there were some years right after we got married that she kicked my bubbo. You know, I mean, she was that good.
She's a hard worker.
She's a very hard worker.
She has, treated this retail, I mean, just like her family, her child, or whatever you want to call it, she's worked in it steadily all these years.
All these years. She has an incredible work ethic, which is what my dad taught me, and her dad taught her.
Yeah,
and,
Paul, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul. I mean, knowing Paul, that's why she was working in high school.
We won't go there.
Give her an allowance. I mean, Paul, come on. Jeez. I mean, y'all got money.
Let her finish high school. No.
But, you know, she has a wonderful spirit. She's always upbeat. She's friendly. I mean, if you know her.
Great partner.
You know, my son even goes in there and buys stuff for his fiance. And, you know, it's because he feels comfortable and she acts like she knows you.
Yeah.
Boy, she knows me. That's why she's not as nice to me. But
yeah, I can't say enough about her. She's a rock star.
You know, it is. I love learning these stories because, you know, we look at how full circle you've come, right? I mean, look where you are today. Look where you started. Look where you were at a low point at discounted financing and clothing. And now that takes us to, you know, trips to Italy, trying to time the next and the latest and greatest fashion from Europe. And I mean, that's got to be, you know, rewarding for you.
Well, let me first say this. Everyone has a story. You know, I mean, anyone that stays the course is going to have a story because it all is not good.
It's going to end up one way or the other.
It's going to be, there's going to be, but when you asked me to do this, I didn't know you were going to flatter me like you have. And to be quite honest with you, I'm so appreciative for you to have me on, but that's really not what I came to talk about was look, my success.
Well, you know, my shows and the guests I have on, I've said this before, there's a very interesting story in every person. It's just up to me to get it out and find what it is. And the things that we've highlighted about you that are all positive, it's not flattery. It's just the facts at different times, you know, that are highlighted.
Yeah.
You know, brighter than back when you know, a guy was driving around looking for your assets. I mean, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but it's part of I guess growth. I mean, you're in a good place, aren't you?
Great.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean,
great place.
Your health seems good. I mean, you look good.
Health's great. Yeah. I'll tell you, it was kind of funny. I went and had a physical every 6 months. Now, when you hit this age, you have to go off it. And my doctor sat there and he goes, you thinking about retiring? I said, absolutely not. He said, good.
A lot of people go down.
He said, Harley, he said, with the lifestyle that you've led and working like you have, he said, it would not be good for you. And I said, you're telling me everything I want to hear because that's exactly, I don't want to quit. I'm not going to quit.
If you enjoy it, which
I love it. I don't go to work thinking I'm going to work. Because
you love clothes, Chad, though, right?
Here's the deal. Clothes are a big part of it, but here's the deal. A major part of it. But I met 85% of my lifelong friends in that store. Now, why would I ever want to not be in that store?
Well, if you're personable and you like to have interaction with people. And so this has been great for you when we got past all the rough times.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
made it a lot better.
Now it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
But, you know, clothing makes people feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
At some level.
You know, let's talk about clothes real quick and then I'll get out of your hair.
No.
Here's the deal. We did study after study after study about appearance. We had a study group from Baylor do a in-depth study about how did these young people go in for interviews and how does it make a difference? It came back, it was much more black and white than I ever thought it would be. The guy that's dressed inappropriately going in for an interview,
he's not getting the job.
It takes 25 minutes to get back where the guy that was dressed properly for the interview was with the person that he's interviewing with. So a lot of people don't have 25 minutes to catch up. You know what I mean? Because he's got to build this rapport because he's not suited
You
properly.
better be super cool
Yeah.
or super in need if you're going to look crappy when you get interviewed.
You got to be a rock star.
I mean, people do judge a book by their cover,
do.
at least initially.
It's going to happen. I mean, it's inherent. It's going to happen.
Better dressed, better looking people generally fare better.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, they get respect. They get better service. There's a number of things that happen just automatically.
Yeah.
And we're not, and I'm not promoting everybody change their.
We're not writing the book on whether that should be the case, but that is the case.
Well, if you remember when it all started to deteriorate in the 90s, when they said, okay, we're going to do dress down Friday because all these guys want to be kind of more casual on Friday. Well, a dress down Friday was originally set up. I mean, what their thought of dress down Friday, and they had a little booklet that said it's a navy blazer and a polo shirt or a button down or something, open collar, pair of khakis, and a pair of regular, slip-on shoes. Well, they took that and took it to shorts, T-shirt. I went into a bank, and this is a true story, I went in and saw a friend.
Howie Alexander.
No. I went into this bank.
I'm close, aren't I? It could be.
You are. But I went in to check, and I needed some things, and I went in to have a visit with him in the 90s. He has his feet on the desk, pair of tennis shoes, pair of khaki pants, and a polo shirt. And I'm going, I'm fixing to tell you my financial needs. And, it was totally I told him I came for something else, and I left. But bottom line is the professionalism, you need to dress for your profession.
Depending on what that is.
Yeah, according to what that is. I mean, if you can't go into an industrial place wearing suits and coats and ties on a daily basis, but people that are in your business, my business, and businesses like ours, we're suited for those people because we take care of that guy and we make sure he's right for that occasion.
Everybody has abandoned you on this because if you think about it, if you go to church, any church, and you walk in there and look on Sunday, you will rarely see a man in a suit and tie anymore, right? I mean, it's been a cultural shift, right?
That's right.
And so that's another challenge for Harley for the,
Well, here's what's really unique. Of course, the stores that have closed have changed our dynamics
and
also.
Created more opportunity for you.
Exactly. We're selling more clothing today than we have ever sold.
Once we got the riffraff out of here. Now,
I didn't say that.
Well, I mean, you're competing with very few, and I'm not saying riffraff because I had a good friend, my dad did, Paul Chance, that he hung in the game for a while, right? And Charles was over there.
He was a good merchant.
He did a good job.
Yeah, he was a good
But
merchant.
now you're talking about Dillard's, right?
Which is a different game. I mean,
it is.
You take... Here's the thing.
I'm a Harley man.
Yeah.
I'm a Dillard's man.
Yeah. There's no ring. But bottom line to the whole deal is that in truth, it has come full circle, but people still want to look good and their wives want them to look good. Here's what's happened in the formal wear business. We're selling more tuxedos than we've ever sold in the history of the store.
You used to rent them.
We used to rent a lot.
You don't rent them anymore, do you?
We still rent them, but we sell more tuxedos than we ever have. And the reason, these girls are smarter and smarter and smarter. They're going, I have to do black tie because if I don't, all my relatives and friends are going to show up in a sport coat, pair of pants, and a boot, and a hat probably at my wedding. And that's not the pictures I want to take through life with me. So they do it black tie just to push you into wearing either a tuxedo or a suit, because that's the image they want if they're going to spend $150,000 on a wedding. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I just participated in one,
sure.
kind of like that. That was black tie. My oldest son got married. Chris, I don't know if towards the end here if we've got that old slide of Harley and is looking good towards the end. One more. All right, let's go with Ask Harley. Ask Harley's a little bit of a social media thing that you've done where you answer the anticipated questions kind of like you just did on the Tugs, right? And people that follow you, they can follow you on social media, on Instagram.
It's real easy. Yeah. Follow us on Instagram. You can, all they have to do is I'll give them a web page, anything that they want. But the bottom line to that is that what that's set up to do, we have people call us all the time. Okay, Harley, I'm doing this. Is this okay to wear? And we shoot them totally straight on everything that we tell them. We don't flower coat it or anything. We just tell them exactly the way we see it. And we're not going to send them out there looking.
You got tired of answering the same question over and over.
Yeah.
So you just made this. But people can easily find you. I don't know what your website domain, if it's harleys.com or something like it, but I know if you type in Harleys.
Harleysformen.com.
All right.
Yeah.
And then they can follow you on Facebook and Instagram, which I think would be advisable because I know you to have had some pretty darn good sales.
We do.
Through the year where there's a discount of, 50, 60, I mean, a pretty good percentage.
We have 2 annual sales a year, and we do that inside the store, and then we do 1 warehouse sale a year. And the warehouse sale, if you really want to take advantage of the situation, that's
right. I mean, I've killed you in there.
Yeah.
Okay. I've killed you with Samuelson jackets and suits that for some reason you couldn't get rid of.
Let me tell you though, it's because you're never going to sell every piece. I mean, you buy.
Golly, wouldn't it be perfect if you bought everything and sold everything?
There's no perfect buyer out there, and there's no perfect market out there. So the market keeps moving a little bit. There's going to be a sale.
You got a little waste and you try to get rid of it in a sale. And so for the people that watch this and say, there's no way that I could ever walk into Harley's and buy anything from him, it's too expensive, you would tell them, well, you should come look first and see if that's true. And maybe it isn't, or hunt down one of these sales.
Yeah. And I mean, we don't take offense to that. We love people that come to those sales. And trust me, I mean, we need those people just like we need you and other people that pay retail.
I realized, my place in Dallas. Mm-hmm. Okay, right up the street, Stanley Korshak.
Yeah.
Okay, I go in there. Now, I was complaining about your prices, but once I went up there, I came back and I was saying, hey, these are bargains.
Those, yeah.
Let me have this, that, and the other. And so, when you get some perspective on nice clothing.
We try to keep it literally in bounds. Let's put it like that. We don't just go completely out of bounds. We open. We have an $800 suit, and we sell the doo-doo out of those suits. And the reason we do is we have a young guy that it looks great on. It's a great suit, and it fits. And then we have a mature guy your age and even my age that goes, hey, I'm going to wear this thing to my son's wedding or my daughter's wedding, and then it's over. I'm not doing this again. And so he's looking for that suit. So we always have that suit. And we just soon sell that suit as a $2,200 suit.
Well, nobody's better at you at, the easy sell as to the hard sale. People who've been in your store like me, they know you. You listen to what they want and don't try to sell them something, the most expensive thing that's in there that they don't, they won't want because they'll be mad at you when it's over.
No, we listen real close to what they want because we want them to come back.
Now, you've got a family connection to the store in addition to Bridget Carson, right?
Yeah. Carson's doing a fabulous job.
I mean, because, I've seen him in the last several times, and he's helped me. And so, you got some other guys in there that have been in there for a while. I know you've had different people that rolled over through the years, but
Carson, I can't say enough about. Chad, if you start talking about your kid, though, everybody goes, man. But he came on board, graduated from A&M in 18. Came to work, and he's been there and he's studied and paid attention, but he is, I don't know where he came from. His mother and Bridget had done a magnificent job with him because he is a very good person.
That's what I say about my kids. I say, well, Rebecca and Angie, they did a fine job. Everybody compliments me on what a great guy.
They did a great job.
But Carson, I'm a crappy customer. I've always said this to you when I'm a terrible customer. I don't like to try things on. I don't know if I want to shop that day.
Yeah.
But Carson, I've really found him to be pleasant and really made me want to buy stuff. And I mean, that's a gold mine.
This is so funny. And this is true. At market, your name came up a couple times. It's so funny. He said, now, Chad will like that right there. I mean, he remembers everything that y'all did. I mean, he gets a big kick out of it.
Well, I'll buy a lot when I come in. And
he thinks you're the bomb.
Feast or famine with me, though.
Yeah. You're not. You don't.
You're gonna.
He said, "Chad, like that."
I won't keep you open.
It was from that person that you're wearing right there, that coat.
Well, having your son work for you like I do with me now, doing well,
so blessed
with your business. And your wife, and everything's going good for you. I couldn't be happier for you. And I appreciate you, coming here and telling us your story today, Harley.
You're the best, Chad. I appreciate you having me. I had no idea we were going to stay here this long, but I'm okay with that. You're listening to what my story is, but thank you very much. I appreciate it very much.